Welcome back to 60 Plus Uncensored. I'm your host, Seb Fry, and my guest today is Dr. Fred Moss, a board-certified psychiatrist with nearly 4 decades of experience who now calls himself the Undoctor. And once you hear him talk, you'll understand why. If you've ever felt like the mental health system doesn't quite get you, or you've wondered whether there's a more human way to deal with life's challenges, this conversation is really going to hit home. So without further ado, let's get into it. Dr. Moss, thank you so much for joining me here today on 60 Plus Uncensored. It really is a pleasure to have you. Now, some of our audience might not be familiar with you and your work, so if you wouldn't mind, just give us a little introduction and tell us who is Dr. Fred Moss and what are you all about?
Wow, so that's an exciting opening. Thank you for giving me that opportunity. So, my work, as we were talking about earlier, my work is really a grander scheme. It's the idea, my work is to actually make it in my life so there's no difference between work and play. That would be the work that I would want to say that I do, is like trying to put it together where I can be me, whether I'm so-called at work or whether I'm at play or whether I'm in with my family or my friends. Like somehow to take on how to find an identity, how to find a core set of values, how to be authentic and genuine in each and every moment, whether or not I'm, making money or have a sustainable occupation. I am a psychiatrist, as we've already discussed. My name is Dr. Fred these days rather than Dr. Moss. It's completely okay, and certainly I respond to Dr. Moss. But Dr. Moss represents the psychiatrist that I was before I went through some, I'd say, pretty profound transformation, although the truth was I was skeptical about the field from the very moment that I came in. And I don't really like psychiatry the way it's conventionally delivered. And in the midst of my career, I decided that I would do some things that were now aligned with what I knew was healing rather than what I was being told to do. And, I went into the field, as I back up here, to kind of give you the chronology, starting point. I went into the field, I guess you'd say a long time ago, 1980 is my first drop into the field. And that was after I had dropped out of college a couple times because all I really wanted to do was learn how to communicate. That's really all I've wanted to do my whole life, was learn how to communicate. It was very clear to me that the essence of all humanity sits inside of communication. And I just wanted to learn how to be a communicator. And the second time I went to college, that was again failed effort. And I dropped out promising never to go back, and instead got a job as at a state mental health facility for adolescent boys as a child care worker. And there I was finally communicating and getting paid with it, paid for it. And it was like kind of cool to be able to work with these so-called kids, and all I had to do was align with them and see them for who they were. And there was some real healing that took place in all directions there. And the only thing I hated about that job was psychiatry. I mean, I really did hate the future of psychiatry, and it was like I couldn't stand the way psychiatry was developing and the directions it was going. And I really chose to go back into that field so that I could bring some sort of hero energy as I look back at it these days, so that I could actually remind people and be a representative of the fact that communication is at the heart of all healing, of all conditions, of all types. So that's what I was intending to do as I went back to school a third time, having promised I would never go back again, ever. And got my prerequisites and then went to medical school, a beautiful medical school downtown Chicago, and, and got spat out as a psychiatrist and after a residency and all. And, indeed, it had gone in the direction that I thought it was going to go in. And, 1980, there were some big changes that took place in psychiatry in those 10 years. And I still wanted to represent who I was, but there was duplicity because I had jobs that I had to do what I was told to do and not necessarily what I knew was right. So that duplicity hurt my soul for a while. And then halfway through my career, I decided to do something different, which was to consider taking people off of their diagnoses and off of their medications and see what happens. And sure enough, people got better, way better, profoundly better, reliably better, predictably better. And in most cases, they lost their diagnosis altogether. And it was like, wow, this is exciting information. How can I carry this message forward so that people start realizing that medications don't do what we think they should do, and neither do diagnoses, and can we do something about it? So my last half of my career, I'd say, so this is like 20 years now, In fact, it is 20 years. 2006 is when this incident took place. And so I've never noticed that before. Thanks for letting me see that anniversary. That is actually exactly 20 years. It's kind of cool. So we started doing things. I started deciding that just confirming what I already knew, which is I don't like diagnosing people and I don't like medicating people. I don't think it does services for people for the most part. I think it's counterproductive activity. And I don't like doing it. So I can I live my life and be a psychiatrist and be aligned with my heart and soul, my authentic, genuine core values? Can I do that? And that's been my struggle from the very beginning. And as we talked about before the show, that's the whole point of life, ultimately. Can you be aligned with, can your actions and your words and your thoughts be aligned with each other? And that's, if they can, then you're living a pretty sweet life. And so that's my intention, and I help people do that myself. I picked up a couple monikers. I traveled around the world. I did traveling doctor for lots of years around the country, multiple states, and then around the world in other areas. And I, was a big advocate for telepsychiatry long before it was even a thing. And I created a brand, called Welcome to Humanity. And Welcome to Humanity is just a brand where people like our group, but it can be our kids group as well, age group, I'm saying. It's like this is it. This is it, man. It comes with all of this. It comes with every piece of it. It comes with the stuff that sucks. It comes with the stuff that's amazing. This is it. This is what we got. That's what it is, man. This is just what it is. And when the more we can get a handle on that, the more we can start from what's so, the more we can actually learn how to communicate with each other, and in that communication create connection, and in that connection create some healing. And because we all need some healing, it's not like there's any one of us who hasn't been wounded significantly, traumatized terribly inside of this life. And so it's time to really look at how can we really manage that without throwing pills at it, or without throwing, acronym, alphabet soup diagnoses at people. We don't have to do that either. We just don't have to. You just don't have to at all. Maybe there's nothing wrong with you, Maybe there's really nothing wrong with you. We don't blame a log for burning in a fire. There's a fire out here, folks. It's a serious fire, and if you're having a hard time living it, welcome to humanity. I mean, seriously, it's not like this is something. We don't have a owner's manual. We don't have a recipe book. We don't have a template that shows us how to do this right. And we're all bumbling, stumbling, and tumbling through this world, pretending to know what the hell we're doing. And frankly, most of us don't have any clue what we're doing. That's good news. And we just kind of walk together, and when we can communicate, that's why I really loved coming, seeing your show, by the way. When I read the notes and all, I was like, okay, let's go. Let's get uncensored. Let's be serious about this. That is freaking life. What have we been pretending to do? If we're over 60, we're back in the day, maybe the most important thing for some of us was Led Zeppelin or something. It's like, you know what? I really love Led Zeppelin. I love Led Zeppelin to the heart and soul of my being. I really do. And every time I hear, some Zeppelin song, I'm reminded of who that same Fred Moss was. Like, I'm not different than that guy. Like, I am the guy who loves Led Zeppelin. It didn't fade away, It's like Led Zeppelin's here, Led Zeppelin was there, and Led Zeppelin's real, and I love Led Zeppelin. And that's a different Fred than the guy that's been telling you about my professional, background here. But as I step forward, it's not that different, and that's what I'm trying to get with Welcome to Humanity. It's all part of the package, and when we can embrace the entire package, we get to start off where we are if we're intending to go somewhere, and that's quite a boost if you can start with where you are. And we had an opportunity now to look at transforming the whole rhetoric, the whole narrative of what mental illness is. I think people are generally beginning to realize, or maybe they're more advancedly realizing, that the system fails them. The system does not do that which they would hope it would do. And I try to direct people stand at the door of the foot of psychiatry and direct people to go into a different direction. I'm like the guard at the door that prevents people from coming into the field that has spoon-fed me my life. It's like an interesting combination. I've been in the heart of the beast, in the belly of the beast, and I've been outside of it. And at this point, what I really get is that my job is to allow people to be themselves, create a space for people to really be aligned with who they are, realize that there's nothing wrong with them, really nothing wrong with them, not at all, never was, never will be, not from a psychiatric standpoint anyways, and that we're all just here trying to make it through is part of the intention. And you know, can we live inside of the chaos? Can we live inside of the misery? Can we live inside of the barbarism? Can we live inside of our pain and suffering, as well as can we live inside of our seeking truth, or seeking justice, or seeking love, or seeking, you know, friendship, or seeking purpose? Can we do all of that? Can we? Well,
that's a tall order.
And it's what's here, man.
Right, right. I'm not saying it's you know, not a good order, but it's a tall order. But you put quite a few things out there, and I just want to start by asking you, what's wrong with psychiatry as it's like practiced? I mean, in most of America. I mean, you said it's basically it's broken. It doesn't work. What is wrong with it?
Well, that's a tough question. You know, what's the word? It's like a reductive question, and so it's you know, asking like what's wrong with the field. Here's looking at the outcome, you can see we're not getting mentally healthier. Do you agree with that? In general, the society.
I think we're probably getting worse. Yeah.
Okay, so that's what's wrong with it. It's here to serve that purpose. It's not here to allow people to be worse. If it was working, that would not be the case. People would be getting better because people are in droves going to the mental health system, and it's not like they're getting better or we're getting better collectively by society. So the proof is in the pudding is what's wrong, is that if there's something wrong, that is the answer. The answer is the system it's built to to steward is failing, and therefore they're not doing the job. And by the way, there's nothing wrong with psychiatry. It's not, again, it just is what it is. It's part of what it is. It's what it is. There are just many better ways to deal with whatever our discomforts are. What psychiatry tends to do, and what mental health tends to do, is to typecast you inside of these three-letter acronyms, whether it's ADD or PTSD or spectrum disorder or BAD or whatever. We do that, and then we take on the identity of that particular condition, whether we like it or not. You know, people walk out of the office first time, and by the way, every single time you go to a psychiatric office, you do get a diagnosis because they have to bill something, so your diagnosis is stamped on you the minute you get into a psychiatric office for any reason. They need to have a diagnosis to get paid. And the diagnosis is, like I said, essentially typecasting. People walk out of the office with ADD and they think they understand what they have, like something that's different than what they thought they had when they came into the office. And it's like, you're just still the same dude. I promise, you're still the same dude. And when we walk out and we have this typecast, it limits what else we think we can do. That's not me. That's my ADD. That's not me. That's my bipolar disorder. That's how I'm on spectrum. And we kind of relinquish responsibility for the parts of life that we're not proud of or not happy with. Now, the truth is, and I leave this disclaimer, very important disclaimer for all our friends out here who are listening, and for you in particular, if in fact psychiatry is working for you, like you're like, no, you don't understand. That's the coolest thing since sliced bread. It saved my life. I love my psychiatrist. I love my therapist. I love my diagnosis. I'm so happy I have it. Thank you for the medicines. Thank you for the treatment. I'm so happy to be involved in the system. I couldn't think of anything better, or some version of that. More power to you, bro. Like, keep doing it. Yeah. Like, seriously, keep doing it. I'm not here to argue with you. This conversation isn't with you. Like, good for you to have found something that you wouldn't replace for the life of you, that you wouldn't even consider upgrading. If you have reached that point in any area of life, like, kudos to you, man. Please keep doing that, whatever that is. This is for the hundreds of millions of people who know that's not the case for them, who realize the system does fail them, doesn't hear them, doesn't relate to them, overdiagnosis, underdiagnosis, overtreats, undertreats, overmedicates, undermedicates. Misaligns or unhear or, misdirects or misunderstands. those people know that the system really isn't, doing what they thought it would do or what they hoped it would do when they entered it. And, are they good? These are generally really good people in psychiatry, by the way. I'm not at all taking a shot at my homies inside of psychiatry because they're great people. This is people who went into the field with their heart and soul out there, hoping to be able to really help people walk through life. That's what mental health is, and it's a very high honor. It's a very high honor to be given that position in life. And generally, the people who are doing it are great people. It's not like they're nefarious at their heart, but the system is built to perpetuate itself. That's like all good capitalistic systems. That's the whole point. The whole idea is it's not a stone I'm throwing at them. That's just the way it is. It's built to perpetuate itself. I recently got let go of a job because I told my employer that I'm working on getting people outside of the field, like actually having people see me for a short amount of time and then be able to sustain themselves and contain themselves, get out there, and working myself out of a job essentially. And the employer said, no, that isn't what we want. We want you to,
repeat business.
Retain. We need that. I was being rated on my retention rate, and if people were leaving early, then that was seen as a flaw in me. And I was like, okay, I can't live like that. I'm not gonna be like contained for not retaining people. And
right.
Yeah.
Got it. Well, so I should have my own disclaimer, and that is that I don't know anything. I don't know jack shit about psychiatry. Everything I know about psychiatry, I learned from watching Frasier. So that's I know there's like Jungian psychology and Freudian psychology, and now we've just covered the depth of my understanding of psychology. Except I understand there's one other thing, which is that frequently, like the difference between a psychologist and a therapist is a psychologist, a psychiatrist can prescribe drugs, and you're mentioning medications, and you hear like a lot of people talk about like better living through chemistry, right? Like I don't know how I could function if I wasn't taking whatever it is they're taking. I don't even know the names of the drugs anymore. It was lithium, I guess, and who knows what else. So tell me about that. You're saying that you want to get people off medications, but yet the psychiatric industry really does, I know, prescribe a lot of drugs. So does medication have any place in psychiatry, or can you take us to a deeper dive into why you think it's so important to get off these medications?
So, of course it has a place because it's presently the number one highest profit margin the industry in the history of planet Earth. So you're asking me if there's a place for that?
In healing.
No, it's not intended to heal anything. It's not even, doesn't even market itself as a healing agent. It's not a healing. It's not what it's intending to do. It's not even pretending to do that. And so
what are these medications? Because there's what are the names that they always used to give people for back in the 90s? They would give you this antidepressant, Prozac, yeah, and there's another one too that was very popular, Zoloft. Yeah, so what Paxil right now? There you go. What are these supposed to do exactly if they're not supposed to make you better?
Are they making you better is a more important question. We've already established they're not making people better, right? The public is not in a better state of mental health than it was before it started taking medicine. I think that's very clear. So it doesn't matter what they're supposed to do. McDonald's is supposed to be good food as well.
It's supposed to feed you, right? Yeah.
And the F and the D are in the FDA for a reason. They're related to each other. So that's not a tough analogy to put McDonald's and Prozac in the same sentence. On Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, the board takes care of drugs, and on Tuesday and Thursday, that board takes care of food. And so, what we have here, it may not be directly exactly like that, but you get my point. They're sharing the whole idea of what we ingest. So these drugs are marketed, and what these drugs do, and when I started taking people off drugs, what I found is that they got better, way better, predictably and reliably better across the board. That's because these drugs actually cause the symptoms they're marketed to treat, and then the horse and the cart get switched. So you come in, you're feeling lousy, you take a drug that actually in the end gives you a little spike of maybe feeling a little less lousy, and then you feel lousier because the drug is causing you to have the symptoms the drug is marketed to treat. Now you imagine that as a business model, it is exquisite. It is exquisite. There's never been a design for a business model that is better than that one. And I mean that by showing that the profit margin far exceeds any industry ever created by man. Ever. Number one, people line up around the block at 8 in the morning to get their plastic tablets with powder in it, thinking that it's keeping them alive. Now, once you start those medications, there's another problem with it, is that once you start it, there's a spike of the symptoms it's marketed to treat upon discontinuation. This is also a very pretty part of the business model. It's fantastic. When you come off of it, you get the spike of the symptoms the drug is marketed to treat upon discontinuation. This is also super brilliant because this has you think that I can't come off of this because when I do, I get a spike of the symptoms that are me. But it's not really you exactly. It's actually being caused by the drugs themselves and the relationship with the with the neuroreceptors. So when we start looking at that, we start realizing that the drugs maybe aren't, I don't have any evidence that they're doing what they're supposed to do, other than people think they need to keep taking them in order to stay alive. I get that. There's a lot of people who think they need to keep drinking tequila in order to stay alive too. And that, I understand that. It's really actually true. But here's the thing. When you come off those medicines, it's difficult. It's tricky. It's chaotic. It is. It's built that way. It's not like you're coming back. There's no you that's coming back. What's showing up is the discontinuation syndrome. Upon discontinuation, you get the symptom. There's nothing waiting in the wings to come back and get you. That isn't how life rolls. So when we come off these drugs, it gives us the impression that we're having the symptoms that brought us to these drugs in the first place. And then we're locked in. You see, once that happens once, because it's so extreme, then people start saying, I tried to come off of drugs, man. I'm never doing that again. It's like, I don't blame you. I don't blame you. I get it. It got worse when you came off of drugs as designed. And that's how the business model works. And that's why we have the profit margins that are in the billions per day. Billions per day. It's a good profit margin. No problem, by the way. The industry deserves to exist because why? Of course it does. But in the end, are there better ways to find stability, better ways to find peace and freedom, better ways to self-express and have a life that works? 100% there are better ways. Totally. This is one way. This is get you what you want to get. And again, if you're happy with having received that which you received from that agency, from that industry, please keep doing it. Of course, there's no problem. I don't have any qualms with that. I know a lot of people who think that way, and please, it's okay. On the other hand, there are multiple better ways to find peace, freedom, self-expression, and a life that works using different techniques than the conventional psychiatric system.
So many people, I think that I don't know what percent of the America has some kind of mental illness, but I would think it's probably upwards of 60 or 70 or 80%. I would say, in my experience, there's some mental health issues lurking there somewhere. But like some people are like extreme, right? I mean, like so depression, which I want to talk to you about, is I probably think they're probably the biggest in my view. My uncultured, uneducated view is depression. But then you have things like bipolar disorder, right? Like bipolar disorder, like I understand that's like a chemical imbalance in the brain, and lithium and whatever else Zoloft is supposed to help that. And like, do people with bipolar disorder, which is a pretty extreme thing, I think, should that be treated some other way other than with medication?
1,000,000%, absolutely. So here's the thing. What if having taken on the diagnosis of bipolar disorder and then treating yourself with that particular diagnostic characteristic with treatments and or medications are actually causing the symptoms to get as crazy as they get? There's not a whole lot of people who have bipolar disorder who never have been medicated because they won't. The diagnosis actually comes from the doctor that you went to get treatment for it. It starts the day you get the doctor tells you it, and then you buy it on yourself. Then it becomes extreme because these medications actually create extreme symptomology. That's what they do in this whole process of creating the symptoms you're marketed to treat. So the people that you think have bipolar disorder are people who are being treated for bipolar disorder. And it's a combination of the treatment actually perpetuating the condition, as well as there being no escape from considering the idea that you might not have bipolar disorder. So it's it's an embracing set of considerations that, number one, you have a condition, and number two, that the medications can indeed and often do for sure make things worse.
Right. Okay. Well, that's good. So, but now like depression, which is, in my estimation, widespread. I don't know what you think, but I think probably 30 to 40% of people in the United States are depressed, fairly chronically, I would say. And that a lot of times I feel, again, uneducated, what do I know, that like better sleep, better nutrition and exercise will probably go a long way to fighting depression. But you say, though, that communication is at the heart of all healing. So how does communication help people battle depression?
It's absolutely the number one way to manage depression. Have you ever noticed that when you're feeling lousy and you go to somebody and you speak to them and they're able to hear that you feel lousy, you feel instantaneously better? That doesn't happen with drugs. That's how healing happens. You find somebody who can relate to you, someone who can connect with you, someone who can understand what you're going through. So depression isn't really a condition that gets you from the outside. You have an opportunity to take on life in multiple different ways. Life keeps coming at you, all the many, many things that we've touched on already in this conversation. And one can become fairly skeptical and fairly resigned and, fairly pessimistic about how things go. Like it doesn't matter. Like no one gives a shit. Like I don't know why I do this anyways. Like all of those things. Or I don't, I lose my purpose or lose my vision or lose my mission. And then I can become depressed, which is nothing. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with me, by the way. I can become depressed, and I get to choose, by the way, how depressed I want to become. It turns out that depression doesn't prevent me from doing anything. The fact is I can look at the exact same circumstances, the exact same sensations, feelings, and thoughts, and look at life in a different way without having to alter the data. And it's not like a depressed, what I have it and what I have seen in thousands of cases is that with powerful conversation, we can actually have people take on life in an entirely different perspective. And in that process, use what has been their experience up until now, not to drive them into a, incapacitated depressive state, but to actually show that there are ways out of this. There are ways to find relief. There are ways that have been designed over the millennium that don't include anything like a 3-letter acronym diagnosis and actually do not include any kind of formal medications built in a laboratory in a high rise, not at all, but actually work to steady ourselves, to give us that core self, to give us that core authenticity, the core truth, the core honesty, the core value system, and the core stability and groundedness that allows us to live life at a high level, no matter what the hell's going on in our world.
Right. So communication, I agree. You definitely do feel better when you talk to somebody, but a lot of people don't feel they have anybody to talk to, right? Maybe they're older, like a lot of our listeners are older, and maybe their spouse died, or maybe they're estranged from their spouse. Maybe they've been married for 40 years, and their spouse doesn't really talk to them, doesn't want to talk to them. They basically don't like each other at all, and they don't really feel they can communicate. Is that why people even go to a psychiatrist or therapist? Because they're like, well, now I can talk to somebody and they'll hear me for an hour every week, or so. But so, what do you do? Like, how do you communicate if that is a way you happen to find yourself in life where you don't really have anyone to communicate with?
That's different, by the way. It's not true that you don't have anyone to communicate with. That is definitely not true. There are people out there you could theoretically communicate with. The idea that you don't want to communicate with people, that's actually in your choice. But are there people out there to communicate? There are so many ways to communicate with people. You just pop online. You can go next door. You can go to the coffee shop. You can go to the library. There's a million people out there that you could actually communicate with. And when you choose not to, that's one way to get through life. It sometimes seems that that's what's here. Like I can't or I don't want to, and therefore I'm not going to. Now, communication also doesn't have to come through conversation. Communication can come through the arts as well. So visual and performing arts, such as art, music, dancing, singing, drama, cooking, writing, gardening, those kind of things are other forms of self-expression that can be explored as well, and can cause some deep stability once you connect. Now, human connection is the highest form. Some people would say it's divine connection, but divine connection is like a higher form, if you will, if I dare, of connecting with something or someone else. But in the world of human connection, the amount of healing that takes place in that second is unprecedented inside of the scientific world.
Well, I think that a lot of people are afraid to communicate because they think that they're going to be judged, right? You know, like if I go and I tell you what's burdening me, you're going to tell me to like suck it up, buttercup, right? Like your problem is you don't do X, Y, and Z. And so if someone is like in a vulnerable position and they feel they need to communicate more, but they don't, they're stuck in place because they feel just their fear keeps them rooted. How do you overcome that fear to actually start to go out the door and maybe go to a library, go to a meetup, go to a ballet performance or whatever?
Yeah, so fear is a funny thing. You know, you can either proceed with fear or not proceed with fear. Either way, fear is going to be here. So that's your choice. It isn't that fear actually prevents you from doing anything. As it turns out, you choose to have fear, then you can either be afraid and proceed or be afraid and stop. That's sort of your two choices here. Neither way is going to take away the fear, but you do have an opportunity. And so, yes, we're very afraid, you know, because we have learned how to become someone that we're not in order to protect the person that we are. We have learned not to talk when we have things to say. We have learned to say things when we don't really know what we're talking about. We have learned how to we have learned how to become somebody different than that's who we would be if we were given genuine license to be ourselves. And we do that as a way of protecting ourselves. It's as a way of, like, I don't want to put myself out there for fear of the major problem, which is that I'm going to be, like, you know, excommunicated or, like, thrown off the island or, like, removed or, you know, disregarded or, you know,
mocked,
whatever, humiliated, exactly, or, you know, and that we're very afraid of that, and we're so afraid of that that we forget how important it is to be together with people. And it's a deep fear. None of us are interested in having our ego burned or to have our heart broken. No one is interested in that, for sure. Nobody is. Is that a good reason not to even go after relationships? Well, you get to make that decision by yourself. You get to decide whether the risk is higher than the benefit or vice versa. So I invite people, and I think people actually already know. Why are we having a podcast? The reason we're having a podcast is that we're hoping that the two of us can make a difference in the world, that somehow we will align together in this conversation, and that listening to this conversation will have an impact on those people who found time to care about listening to us. Like, again, at the heart of all that is nothing less than communication, nothing less than connection. That's what we're doing here. We're displaying or dancing with each other to see if we can make some generalized hits, some generalized points, and present that to others so that we can make a difference in their life. All of that is about the essence of communication. And there's nothing ever that has been, you know, designed. If you can find something more important than communication in this world, I invite you to go do that for the rest of your life.
Okay. Well, you also mentioned ego right there, and there's the ego and there's the id, right? The two other psychiatric principles, I guess. Ego frequently gets in the way of people from, you know, trying something new or admitting that they're wrong. So are there any tools that are available without medication to like overcome how your ego is blocking you from like growth and progress in your life?
Well, certainly there's no medication that does it either, by the way, but so it's not outside of medicine. There's not like a medicine that does it. And the answer is one becomes aware of their own ego, their own selfishness, their own concern about their own welfare, and incorporates that life into life moment by moment. You know, at any given moment, I may be paying too much attention to me and not as much attention to you or to the impact I'm having on our listeners. And this is just one of the things about Welcome to Humanity is we get to design how important are we in this mix? How important is the question, what about me? What's in it for me? How important is that question versus how important is it to be of maximum service to others? Because when we can be of maximum service to others, the reward there is so extraordinary, and we usually forget it when we're not being of service. But the ultimate reward of being of service to others, allowing ourselves to be aligned with our core self, connecting with others, and then being of service to them, like helping them through life or assisting them through their next steps, is so extraordinary. And that can only happen reliably when we connect with each other at that same frequency, like a tuning fork frequency, that we wash off the cobwebs off the tuning fork, and the more we become human, and the more we actually get to align with each other and say what's so about our lives and be honest and real about what's happening, the more likely we are to communicate and create the spark of that healing that I've been talking about the whole session.
Maximum service to others, right?
Yeah.
So, like, I'm a big believer in service. Is that, in fact, the point of life? Is to be like, how can you help other people, right? Like, okay, like you have your, like, there's a thing, okay, well, you're in an airplane, it's crashing, put your own oxygen mask on first, because if you don't do that, you can't help other people, right? Okay, good. Same thing with your life, right? Like, you need to be, like, physically healthy, really, before you can help other people to the maximum extent that you're able to. So this thing right here, maximum service to others, how important is that to living like a fulfilled, enriching, joyous life?
Well, it is the trump card. It's a trump card in the book that I wrote in 2019 called Creative 8, Healing Through Creativity and Self-Expression, that can be found on my website and in Amazon. It's a cool book. The whole idea is that the trump card is being of service to others. That's what do they call, like, spoiler? That's the spoiler of the book, is that, we have these ways of communicating with each other. When all else fails, being of service to others is so remarkable that it is like the sweep. It's like it's such a clean break, and so rewarding ultimately. Now, how important is that to others to live a full life? I think you can probably live a full life still by being of minimal service to others. I believe that. I don't think it's a prerequisite to live a full life. I think it's a fast track to living a life that works.
Right. Well, I mean, a long time ago, as a younger person, like, what's the meaning of life? And I think that the meaning of life is to spread love, essentially, right? Which I think you express love by being of service to other people. So that's interesting. Now, you've mentioned a couple of times this website, Connect with Humanity. What is it?
Well, welcome to humanity.net.
Welcome to humanity.net. What is that all about?
Yeah, that's just been my website for about 7 years. Everything I've done, all my books and all my podcasts and all my, articles and projects are embedded in that website. So that's a place where I also show there's some videos there and some access to me that your listeners can have. I'll be glad to have a discovery call. Maybe there's a conversation here. We get to be over 60 and we start thinking that we can't count on the whippersnappers to help us through, like, coaching or through guidance. And I realized, recently that I'm over 60, I'm considerably over 60, and I have a tremendous amount of life experience, and I've met 40,000 people in a professional status in my life in order to help them through issues, in order to be right there with them one way or another. That's why they showed up with me. And I really, I'm noticing, spending time with the elder population, that I can really create a space where people can reconnect with their own humanity, which is what we're really talking about here. We've been stripped away of what it really means to be human by getting caught up in all the rigmarole of what it means to be alive and all the many, 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 many technological and weird requirements that we're all taking on just to make it through another day. And I am very interested in creating space for my elder homies that allow them to see that life can be lived magically no matter what age you are. And in fact, probably given the tools that you've acquired in those 60 plus years, can be lived even more magically than these whippersnappers are getting away with.
Oh, I think definitely, for sure. But yet, I know that, depression and isolation, are endemic in the elder population, and that a lot of people, they just don't know where to start. So if they go to your website, what should they start with at your website? Like, is there walk me through your website, like, because if people want to get help, which what you're saying to me is, like, so right on, right? I mean, like service to others, communication and connection, I think, really are, is like the magic ticket, I think, to like having a rewarding life in your 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and maybe beyond. Where do they start? At your website?
Yeah, so I have a couple websites. The other website is really a handy one to use. That's called drfred360.com, drfred360.com. That's a really, really nifty website that just has icons and keeps you in my system very easily, and fun to run around that website. It's kind of like covers the same thing as welcometohumanity.net in a slicker, kind of technologically more advanced way. And I'd say, search around, snoot around, sniff around and see what you see and see what you don't see. And if this is something you're interested in, I'll be glad to have a conversation with you on how I can be of any kind of service, because that is my highest interest. How can I be of service in any way to either create a space for your own growth and development individually, or with a group, or inside of your family or business, or whatever it is that is where your challenges are. And the website will give you a great overview of all the many things that I've said, done, and been over the last 10 or 12 years. And you already can hear a little bit of who I was beforehand, all the way back to when I dropped out of college and before that. Again, I think that if it's something that interests, I have a retreat coming up, for instance, in September, and that retreat is for people who also have been giving their whole life, and have now noticed that they're not only burning out, but haven't paid proper attention to keeping their own, keeping their own vessel in the highest form. And so we can help people with that, and that's what the event is for, putting people together to give 4 immersive days of finding ourselves and finding that core center. I have some paraclinicians that are working with me, and I invite your listeners to consider that. That's at welcometohumanityretreat.com, welcometohumanityretreat.com. And take a look at that and see if that's something that, when September comes, there's going to be a lot of things that happen between now and September, and we're all going to be ready to just kind of hunker down and be with people who care and who have a thought process that has us be, okay, what are we supposed to do from here? And that's the intention, is taking high-level people who make a difference with a lot of people and make sure that they're grounded so they can deliver at the highest value.
Well, so do you have some kind of like community? I mean, like, do you have like a social media, like a Facebook group, or like some place where like-minded people who might be going to this retreat can like connect with each other online?
Yeah, I do. I have a school room, SKOOL, Alex Hermosi's group there. So that school.com/welcome to humanity will get you into that room. It's called the Reset Circle, where I show people how to reset. How to bring yourself right back to the beginning, like bring yourself back to the core, bring yourself back to that center person, and that the Reset Circle is there's a few hundred people hanging out in there, and I do have I think two rooms inside of Facebook and 2 rooms inside of LinkedIn that I kind of monitor and seek over that can also be there. But again, it's not in the rooms; it's in the communication. Rooms are just for receiving, reading, thinking you're getting it by understanding that, mostly. Now, the truth is there's the interactive rooms inside of school and inside of Facebook that you can still have some interaction. What I'm suggesting is that the real healing comes from reorganizing our mindset and realizing that human connection, one way or another, is at the heart of healing. And if that connection comes in the form of high-level service, that's great. But there's other spaces that can come as well, and inside of the creativity and inside of sharing with each other. And so I think once someone trips into my YouTube channel, or trips into Facebook, or trips into LinkedIn, or trips into either of my websites or this website for my event, you'll get a good taste of what's here. And if it's something that interests you and you'd like to work with me, like to follow me or become my friend or whatever, all those things are possible.
Well, Fred, if I may call you Fred, you seem like you're pretty fired up, man. I mean, like, you said you're over 60. How old are you? Like 65?
I'm 68.
You're 68. Well, you look great, and you have the energy of someone who's like 28. I mean, like, you are really. What's your secret? How do you maintain this level of energy and frankly, like excitement, at your age? Like, what keeps you going? What's the secret?
Well, that's I don't maintain this level of energy, first of all. So it's not like
I don't know about that. I don't think this is an act.
So some days I do have a high energy when I'm rolling. It's true, but we have our ups and downs. Welcome to Humanity has points where things can get very dark and very painful, and it can be really ugly and isolating and fearful and frightening and disorienting. And I want to make that very clear that the person who's showing up inside of this podcast as this, I've got all that put together, doesn't have all that put together. It's part of what makes me human is that I have that too, very much real, totally. And so it's worth getting that. And I think the only thing that what I think is the fuel for having some kind of energy in this direction is having a purpose higher than myself. Like the truth is I have an inside track on this a little bit. And when I speak, I make a difference. And when I speak on podcasts, the host generally appreciates me, and I get feedback that the listeners appreciated the conversation. And all of a sudden, I'm making a difference. And if I'm making a difference when I have a purpose that's greater than myself and I'm making a difference, the reward is high, and there's a revitalization, a reactivation, a resetting that takes place at that time. And I think that's what you're seeing this morning.
Right, having a purpose higher than yourself. I think that's really key. I mean, people say, "What's your big why?" Right? And I think everyone. I mean, I don't know if I believe that Simon Sinek thing. Like, I mean, my why is a small why. I haven't really figured out my higher purpose yet. So where do you see yourself like in 5 years? I mean, where are you going to go with this? I mean, like, it seems like you have a lot of gas in the tank. You could take this thing quite some ways. Do you have like a plan for where you're going to be like 5 years down the road? Or
this book that I wrote is good, man. It's a good book. It's good. It's not.
Tell us about the book.
The book is really fun. The book is 65,000 words as it sits right now, and like I said, it's in final editing and proofing. It's everything about how I got to be who I got to be. I mean, it's my whole storyline. I remembered about 40 or 45 stories and put them in chronological order and intertwined them with how it all fits into being a psychiatrist and transforming the narrative about psychiatry towards communication. It's like the opus. It's like the essence. It's like where I really am today. Instead of looking back at my life in compartmentalization, like who I was when I loved Zeppelin in high school, rather than that, it's like, well, seeing the long thread of what it was like to be me. And then I did something that I invite any memoir writer to do. I fed this whole manuscript to Peach and then had Peach actually read it back to me out loud.
What is Peach?
Peach is just this app that takes PDFs or takes different documents and reads it for you. So it read it out loud through AI, of course, and I listened to me being read out of this book. And what a great experience it was to actually get, that happened, that happened, because it's, that makes sense, that goes with that. And so I'm very proud of that. And I think the book itself is, it isn't like I'm going to be pitching the book. I think the book is really just, it's holding space for where I am at this point in my life. It's like the essence of how these 68 years have unfolded is what the book really is. And how it's led me to be somebody who can speak to the power of communication at the heart of all healing, and to the notion that maybe there's nothing wrong with you in the first place. Like when we really start getting that, which isn't that hard to get, and you don't have to sell off very much to get that there's nothing wrong with you. It's quite okay that there's nothing wrong with you. You don't have to get excited about it. It's funny, with psychiatry, it's the only subspecialty that I know of that if they come to my office and I tell them they're okay, they get pissed. It's like, what is that? It's like a cardiologist says you're okay, you get all excited. An ophthalmologist says you're okay, you're really happy about it. The psychiatrist says you're okay, and you get like furious. Like, what is that? So anyways, because people need to have a reason to relinquish responsibility for the parts of their life they're not that proud of. And so you can say stuff like, that's not me, I got depression. That's not me, I got PTSD. That's not me, I got on the spectrum disorder. And so nothing wrong with that, by the way. There's nothing wrong with that. It's okay. People would love to love to point out there for the problems that they're having. Of course. If I could blame you for all the mistakes I made already today, I would do that in an instant.
Oh, please do. Well, what about like addiction, right? I mean, like addiction, people say like it's an inherited thing. Like my father was an alcoholic, therefore I'm going to be an alcoholic. I mean, and people basically just say it's not my fault because this is just the way I'm was created. Is there any truth to that, or what would you tell people who are suffering from
I don't
addiction?
know. There's a truth because people believe it, and therefore it's their truth. I'm not going to deny the fact that there's some large amount of people think that they're helpless to their addiction. The way that I don't think you became an addict in any way because your dad was an addict, except that you maybe followed some patterns that he did. But it's not. There's no genetic component to addiction at all. It's never been discovered, and there just simply isn't one. I mean, until it's discovered, there isn't one. And so this idea is that addiction, as Gabor Mate, one of my colleagues says, is that addiction is actually to the best solution at the time to that which is missing in your life. So it actually serves a purpose, and because it serves a purpose, it looks like it's a patch that needs to be put back on every time that you take it off. You take it off, you get, what do? You get a surge of the symptoms that the drug is marketed to treat, and when that happens, you're back to drinking, or you're back to shooting, or you're back to snorting, or you're back to whatever, eating, whatever it is that you're doing, and or watching, for God's sake, in the world of that as well, and so addiction is almost a proper response to trying to fill the hole that is the hole in the bucket or a hole in the rowboat, and it looks like it's going to serve that purpose. And so it's not like something's wrong with you when you're addicted either. By the way, maybe there's nothing wrong with you, and even while being addicted, it doesn't mean that you can't stop, and it doesn't mean that it's easy to stop, and it doesn't even mean that it's like doable. None of that. I'm not saying all that. Now, what I am saying is that I like to hold on to the idea, very much so, that you are the author of the way that your life is going, 100%. That there is no one else who's an author of your way your life is going any more than you are. And in that possibility, you have an opportunity at any given second to do any number of an infinite number of things. You get to do that. You get to choose what to do next with your life. You actually do. Like, that's really true. And I'm a really big proponent of giving you the power to make proper decisions when faced with that essence, which is at all times, which is you get to say, be, or do whoever you want in any given second.
So, so when it comes to like addiction, there's like an A and AA, and I've never been to either one of those kind of meetings, but I've seen them on TV a bunch of times, and people are sitting around in a circle and talking, they're communicating. Do you think that really is the magic to AA, is the fact that people are getting together and connecting and communicating with each other?
Well, people who do 12-step programs speak to the power of the fellowship being the primary and most important piece of what it takes in order to find another way to live besides ingesting or partaking in whatever has led you down the dark road of addiction. So we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, or we were powerless. That's the first word of the 12 steps, is the word we. And there's a reason for that. And that's because it is a we job. It's not a single job. And so inside of like getting our yayas met, or getting that thing that we're after, which is indeed being in a human connection, AA offers, and as does NA and all the 12-step, the most unconditional fellowship out there known to mankind, and a full acceptance of who you are coming in the door. You're not going to be disregarded. You're not going to be dismissed. You're not going to be, thrown off the island in an AA meeting. More than likely, I mean, you can find your way to get kicked out of an AA meeting, but it takes some effort, and so the fellowship is really critical. I don't know that it's the most critical, but it's certainly a critical piece of why AA and NA have helped over 3 million people.
Right. Yeah. So, okay, but so you mentioned there's no genetic link that's ever been shown why, like, if your father's an alcoholic, you're an alcoholic, right. But you're following a pattern. Well, a lot of people are stuck in a pattern, right? Like their unconscious is imprinted on them. Like, this is the behavior that I have, right? And like that's what you do. That's your learned behavior over many years. How do you break out of that pattern? I mean, like, is communication enough to break out of a decades-long pattern like that?
No, there's other things that, of course, have to do. Communication is required. But, I mean, once you start realizing that at any given second you can say, be, or do something different than you've been up until now, when you start realizing that that's a real possibility, like, no kidding, your next move is not dictated by what you've done in the past. It just isn't. You really have an opportunity to do something different in this next second. All of us do. And once you start realizing that, then you start realizing you're not really run by the patterns that have been developed in your life. There's an impulse, there's a road there, there's a possibility of repeating the same stuff over and over again. We all know how to do that, but it's not like you're required to do that. And when we start actually unleashing ourselves from the idea that we're stuck in a rut, or that we have to do what, I need to light a cigarette, I need to have a drink, I need to watch porn. No, actually, you don't. I get it that you might. I get it that you can. I get it that it feels like a good idea. But I don't get it that you're locked into doing those things. And I think what we have here is an opportunity to really exploit the freedom that we have at that pause, right at the pause where we decide, okay, do I have a lighter for my cigarette? Wait. No, make a decision. You want to smoke that cigarette? Go ahead, but don't do it because you have to. Do it because you chose to. Like, that's okay. No problem.
Right. Because you consciously chose to. So, my favorite holiday of the year is New Year's, right? Because, it's a real thing, right? Like it's like the Earth has gone around the sun, right? I mean, like it's a real observable thing. Everyone experiences it. Everyone has only so many days of their lifetime, and people use a New Year as a chance to reset, right? Make a resolution. I'm going to live a different life now that it's the first year, but actually, every day is like that. Every day you could wake up and choose to lead a completely different life, but actually every second is like that.
100%.
You could change to like live your life the way you live your life at any moment. You don't have to wait for New Year's. You don't have to wait for tomorrow. Actually, you shouldn't wait. I mean, once you've actually decided to do something, why are you waiting, right? Why wait till tomorrow to start that diet? How about you put down the cake today and just make a different choice today? But it is so hard to like break out of these patterns, I mean,
who said
if you're stuck, what do you do? Like on your website, like what do you go on your website?
Interaction is where it happens. It's not going to happen by staring down a website. It's not how it's going to happen. So maybe you're not as stuck as you think you are, and maybe it's hard, whatever that means. I don't even know what that means. Oh, it's hard. It's like so hard to stop doing that which I have a habit of doing. I get it that it seems hard, but you could finally also get that there are very difficult things to do in the world, and that's not one of them. And you, in fact, can make a difference on any given second to say, be, or do something that you've never been. You went through that very nicely in that last cascade. I appreciate that. But the idea, again, is that when you realize that you are free to take ownership of your life, like you are free to actually be the author, the sovereign, the sovereign center of your life, like take agency for your life, like own the steering wheel, own the joystick, like choose what to do. There's a thing there called you that is really making those decisions. And when we come to grips with that, that's when we start getting a life that's more aligned with who we want to be or who we know ourselves to be, rather than who we've found ourselves becoming by default in this very perverse notion of trying to be someone that we're not in order to protect the person that we are.
Right. Well, Fred, this has been a tremendous conversation. I'm kind of fired up about it, and I love the message that you're putting out there, that medication is not going to help you, and that you have complete agency over your own life, and that like connecting with others and serving a higher purpose are two really great ways, at least, to lead a better, healthier life. So that's a tremendous message. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. Now, if people wanted to get a hold of you personally, to talk to you personally for whatever reason, like what's the actual best way? Is there like email, a phone number, Instagram? Do you have a podcast? Like what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Yeah, both websites are a great place to get a hold of me. You can see it's very obvious how to get to the discovery call from both websites. And that can put us on a phone call with each other or a Zoom call, and we can see whether, what can we talk about? How can I be of any service? How can I bring any kind of clarity to a life that might be in disarray? I'm deeply interested in doing that. And then I do troll around Facebook. Unfortunately, I spend way too much time still trolling about that stupid place. And so I can be found on a DM there. It's again pretty easy to find me. And I suppose of all the social medias out there, my favorite is LinkedIn. Although I like YouTube as well, but in LinkedIn that's probably where my most I'll say rooted professionalism sits. Like I have a site there that's generally up to speed. I have a newsletter with a couple thousand people, or with over 1,000 people as subscribers. And between any of those spaces, I'm eager and willing to talk to somebody or create the possibility of, not a cookie cutter approach, but like, what is it that you want and need, and how can I provide access to it?
All right, terrific. Well, Fred, I have really enjoyed our conversation tremendously, and I want to thank you so much for being a guest on 60 Plus Uncensored, and I will definitely catch you on the flip side. All right, that's a wrap for this episode of 60 Plus Uncensored. Huge thanks to Dr. Fred Moss for setting the tone with such honesty and insight. Now, if you like this episode, do me a favor. Hey, do Fred a favor. Hit that subscribe button, leave a review, and share it with someone you know who needs to hear it. Oh, and by the way, if you know someone like Fred who's over 60, who's still out there doing big things, living boldly, working with purpose, or aging on their own terms, I would love to hear from you. Reach out at team60plus.com or join the conversation at 60 Plus Living on Facebook. I'm Seb Fry, and this is 60 Plus Uncensored, because as we're learning, life after 60 isn't the end, it's just getting good.
Subscribe now.